Hello and welcome back to Plannercraft. Hopefully you can all hear me fine. Now I'll be able to see comments on Facebook, but I can't currently see comments on YouTube, so bear with me. They will come through eventually on, well, hopefully on screen. If not, just drop us a message. So first of all, hi Thea. And I'll just allow a few more people to join. I was a little bit early this morning. So today I'm going to be creating a Mother's Day card, and I'm going to try and do this in 4 parts. So this morning we're going to concentrate on making the cut file. Then this evening you will see me use those cut elements to create the background for the card. Then tomorrow morning we're going to be colouring in the cup that you see here. So this is from Cup of Joy by Joy Claire, which is a digi stamp. And then finally tomorrow night you'll see it all put together, which shouldn't take too long. So morning Deb. Hi Thea, in case you missed, because I can see you kind of dropping in and out a little bit, I think. Oh, that Facebook's gone totally mad. Okay, so do comment and ask questions just to keep me company, because Ian's in the other room and not saying a lot. Okay, I'm just wondering who's posting his Plannercraft, because it's not me. Okay, so as I was saying, I've already pulled out a couple of the slimline rectangles, so those of you that have the stitched SVGs will recognise this file. And what I've done is, just to help me have a little bit of a note as to which ones I'm using, I've put in a name which relates to the height measurement of the rectangle. Finally got notification live for the first time since the Facebook media mess. Yeah, notifications have been a bit fun. So hopefully we should be currently live both on Plannercraft and on Plannercraft and Go Create. So fingers crossed. I set that up this morning, so that should be automatically feeding across. The only place it doesn't automatically go is the group. So if anybody wants to share it to the group, you're welcome. Morning Marion. Okay, so the reason that I've used these stitch rectangles is if we create them, try that again, put my teeth back in. If we create them ourselves, we have to worry about getting these dashes to line up perfectly into the corners, and why do that if somebody else has already gone to the trouble? Because it can take ages. So we'll let them have done the hard work, and we'll just enjoy and play. So I have 2 sizes I want to use, one of which is 177.8mm tall and the other is 190.5. and I'm aiming to go into an A5 card, so this here is an A5 card that we're using. So I'm going to pop those 2 shapes by holding Command or Control on a PC, so that I've got the 2 in blue. Now if you're working with something like Illustrator, you're going to have to click where the little blue squares are on the right hand side. If you're working with CorelDRAW, you can just select it exactly the same way, and same with Inkscape. It's just Illustrator that's a little bit more tricky. So we're going to go Command and C or Control and C to copy. And I've set up a working document that is set up to my usual active area with a DPI of 96, because this sheet we're only going to cut, and that's important to bear in mind. So we're only going to cut this, and we're not even going to cut it all at once, but as long as we think that's just for cutting, so you can see I've saved it as a working document, cut only, so we can't get confused. So I'm going to paste that in using Command and V or Control and V on a PC. And we know those are the right sizes, so we don't need to rescale anything, but we do need to space them out, because at the moment if we were to cut them like that, we're going to end up with a lovely frame and a panel for the middle, and I actually want them as 2 separate elements so that we can layer them up. So let's put those side by side, and if it does that, it just means it's picked up just one bit, and I want the whole layer. So the other thing you may find is, depending on your software, sometimes it separates out as layers, other times it separates out as groups. So I just want to make sure I get the right one. There we go. So there's our two elements that we're going to cut out of our stamping card, or a nice white smooth card if you have any. And onto that we're going to be doing a little bit of inking. So I wanted to spend some time with you today setting up a stencil. So first of all, we're going to concentrate on the inside of the stencil, and then we're going to draw around the outside of the shape. And Carol, yes, you are late. Naughty step. But you haven't missed much. So far what I've done is I've copied in two of the rectangles, so 177.8 and 190.5 relates to the height measurement of the two that I'm using, and it's going to eventually build into our A5 card here. So I want to build a stencil that I can use to colour this piece first. So to do that, I'm going to duplicate a copy so that I have a kind of guide to work to. So I'm just going to select the shape, press and hold Alt, click and drag, and over here I'm just going to drop a copy. Okay, so you can see it's going to copy it into that same layer group, but I want it separate, so I'm going to drag it all the way up to the top. You can see that blue line's now stretching the entire way across our layers palette, and we're going to let go. So that takes it out of that group, and it's now an entity in its own right. Okay, if you want me to slow down at any point so that you can create along, don't hesitate to tell me I'm going too fast. We've got plenty of time, so I can always repeat things if you've missed anything. I am getting some messages, but I can't see those at the same time and still be able to see your comments, unfortunately. Okay. So I was thinking I wanted to work with some stripes, so nice striped stencil. So it's something that I haven't got in my stash already. If you want to do circles for this next bit, you can do, and have a dotty background. If you want to do some dashes and have an interesting background like that, you can do. But for me, I just want some nice simple diagonals. Now, if you're working with Illustrator, you have a really easy way of doing this. You're going to draw one line, duplicate it, put it down to the bottom of the shape, the other one up to the top, and do blend, and it will just fill in the gap for you. Nice and easy. With Affinity, however, we have to go a little bit of a longer way about it. Okay, so first of all, I'm going to bring in a rectangle, and I'm going to make that rectangle extend well past our shape, like so. Okay, I'm going to change to my move tool, so that's pressing V. If you've got the new book, you'll see that every so often you get a V to press. It's probably the most used key press, so you'll be wearing out your V key. Then we're going to press and hold Alt, and we're going to drag another copy down. We're going to do that again. So I'm keeping Alt pressed as I'm clicking and dragging the shape. So I click, drag, release, click, drag, release, click, drag, release, click, drag, release. Okay. Then if we go back and we select all of these shapes, we can go up to the top where our little line function is, and we can use distribute. Okay, so that's going to space the vertical spaces between our objects so they're nice and even. So you can see it's still all higgledy-piggledy up the sides, but our spaces are nice and even. So that's one way that we can do some nice horizontal stripes, if that's what you want. And that's kind of the simple way to go. If we were to align that to left, you can see we can make those all go into line, and we can just use our stretch ones to make it kind of just fit slightly over the edge of our shape. Kind of still want it to go just a little bit outside so you don't get a white border. like so. So if you want to do horizontal stripes, that one's done. You can just skip to the bit where I'm going to draw the shape round. Now, let's say you wanted to have those shapes so that they're actually on the diagonal instead. So I'm going to stretch this out. Now, obviously, if we're at this point, if we were to do this and go, right, okay, I want them at a 45-degree angle, that's great, but it's only going to fill part of our shape. And the other option is that we then try and do a line and then space it. Sometimes though, it's easier to just rotate one shape first and then do all the duplication rather than trying to fiddle around and spacing things. So if I undo the rotation, I'm going to get rid of all these shapes like so. So I'm just pressing and holding shift and clicking on each one and then hit the backspace. We're going to rotate our top shape, and you can see, if you watch our rotation guide, you can see it's jumping from 0 to 15. And that's because I'm pressing and holding the shift key, and that's going to constrain our rotation. We can take it up to 30, we can take it up to 45 if we want. So think about your design, which angle is going to work best for what you're putting in. So if the design that you're working with already has a diagonal in it, you might want to mirror that angle. If it doesn't, you kind of, it's all down to your personal choice. So I'm going to go about there. Rather than going full 45, I'm going to go for about 15. Okay, now we can go back and we can do all our duplication again. So again, press and hold Alt. I'm not being overly careful with my spacing because we're going to sort that out a bit. Now you also want to bear in mind these corners here. So what I am going to do is just drop in an extra one, and I'm just going to take all of those shapes. So if we go over to our layers panel, press and hold shift and click on the bottom one, we can select all those shapes in between. In Illustrator it's a bit more of a pain to do it, you have to click on each individual one. We're going to move it up so it's just slotting over that corner. So we're making a move card today, Jen. Okay. So now we can do our alignment, and we're going to left align it first. So that's important. Thank you. Then we're going to do our spacing, and we're going to get our nice even spacing. Put it behind her. Yeah. Do you want to quickly say hello?
Hello everybody. Bye everybody. I am watching you in the other room.
Hi.
You may notice that I put a message up saying...
Oh, it was you, was it?
Yeah.
Watching on silent then, because I said who's commenting this Plannercraft.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it sounds like I can't hear what you're saying.
Yeah, I mean, you're not using the captions to make you giggle.
No.
And Tracy says hi. And bye.
Bye.
Okay. So, whereas when we had our stripes going horizontally, we could just stretch it to tidy up the ends. This time, you can see it's going to be a little bit different, because if we're just trying to squeeze that, first of all, your angle's going to start to shift, you're going to start warping your shapes. So instead we're going to need to trim them. So I'm just going to go and clip off those. So if we go to our rectangle tool, we can draw a rectangle that's going to work as our trim point. Okay. So when we're subtracting, it's always going to subtract from the bottom shape. So if we were to select everything at the moment and do subtract, all it's going to do is go down to this shape here and subtract that shape from that one, and all the rest in between it's just going to remove, which isn't what we want. So in Affinity we can just merge those into one shape. In other software you have to do it slightly differently. So usually with a group, or you can do like a compound merge. So I'm going to add those together, and it's going to merge it all into one shape. So you can see there's all our stripes. Select our rectangle tool, and we're going to go subtract, and we tidy up that edge. I would say height, but he's already gone. That was a very quick drop in. Okay, so I'm going to do the same this end. So I've selected both the rectangle and the stripes, and I can go to subtract again, and we've got a nice clean cut. Now you could choose to do the same top and bottom if you want to, and it will help save a little bit of material in terms of adding extra on top. So I might do that just for this top piece so you can see what difference that's going to make. So back to the rectangle tool, and I'm going to go to about there. So I'll give myself a little corner to kind of work to for placing. And again, select the stripes and subtract. That means that then when we do our stencil border, we don't have to go quite so high. But if you want to leave it down the bottom, you can do. I'm going to drop in another rectangle, and this is going to form the outside of our stencil. So at the moment, if we draw this, it's going to put in a solid grey, same as we have here, and no stroke. We want to change that first ideally. So if we click on our fill, you'll see there's a little white circle with a red line through it. That's saying that it's going to have no fill in it. So if we click that, it's going to go like that. Now that's useful for anything that you just wanted to just cut out and not fill. So with our stroke, it's already got black selected, but it won't show because we've got this none here. So clicking on that, we're going to open our stroke panel, and we can just set it to a solid stroke. Don't get hung up on the width of your stroke, because again, it makes no difference to your cutter, it only makes any difference to you. And we can drop that in around the outside. So if snapping's getting to you and being a bit annoying, so you can see it's snapping to that bottom corner, you can use Alt instead and it will ignore it. There we go. So there's our stencil. Now just to make it nice and tidy, I'm going to move that rectangle down one, so now our curved stripes are on top, and we're going to punch those stripes back through our cut section for our stencil. Okay, so select both, and we're going to go to subtract. Okay, so now it's going to look like we've just got lines. So if you want to see whether it's done it correctly, if you pop in a colour, you can see that's the shape our stencil is going to be. Doesn't matter what colour you pop in, just so that you can see. So now that we've done that, we don't need our guide anymore, so you can just delete it. Okay. Now if you wanted to, you could do another one for your background. So if we go to our background here, you can see this panel here is what we've set up our stripe stencil for. So we could do another stencil for this panel if we wanted to, and put some colour in there. Or if you wanted to keep that white, we could go for a stencil panel behind. So, hi Corinne. So, any questions before I go any further? I'll just pause there for a minute. Is there a particular style of stencil you'd like to see me make that would help you? So the other thing to bear in mind is there was some chatter at the weekend about the video that I did with embossing folders and how to create your own. So that same diagonal technique you can use to create a diagonal embossing folder if you want to. So if you didn't want to ink your background panel and you've got some nice colour card to use, you can use that same stencil as an embossing folder. Okay, the cup and saucer, sorry Carol, you were late and I didn't say. The cup and saucer is from Cup of Joy by Joy Claire, and it's a digital stamp. So it's actually a set of them. I don't think I still have it open. Let me see if I can find it quickly. Just drop that in there. Open. There we go. So those are all the designs that you get. So you've got the individual elements to decoupage if you want to, and I have done a project where I've actually done that with some Renia. Hi Sally! You've got some nice sentiments, and then what I'm going to do next is I'm actually going to create a large sentiment to go with it. So at the moment, if we go back to our mock-up, I've got Happy Mother's Day, and I'm thinking it'd be nice to put Mom. How do I do a rectangle with little circles all around it, please? Okay, if you have affinity, this is really, really, really easy, and you're going to kick yourself and think, why didn't you think of doing it like that? So if I clear a little bit of space, let's go for a copy of our back rectangle again, so that we've got a guide. Pop it up to the top. I'm going to hide my stencil out of the way for now, just so I can see a bit of a clear patch. Hi Romaine. So let's say you want to put your little circles around the edge. First of all, what we're going to do is select your guide, go to your contour tool, we're going to click and drag inwards or outwards. It's really weird, it kind of does opposite to what you think. But inwards for where it's going and outwards for where your mouse goes. Very bizarre. Okay. You let go of the mouse when you're happy with where that line is. Like so. Okay. You can bake appearance. So that then says that's the line you want to use. Then if we go to stroke, and we're going to go to our dashed line and click. Make sure you have the round cap selected, which is the first one. Then we're going to use our dash settings. First of all, we're going to increase the space between our dashes. So we're going to set that to 6 for now. And that means that you can start to see your dots. And if I increase the width, you can set how big you want that relative measurement to be. And your dash, which is the first one, we're going to set to 0. So you can see straight away you've got a load of circles that you've got going around your shape. Now we can work with this measurement, which is our gap, so that we can realign those. So let's say we go down to 4. You'll see it puts in a few more dots. And you can even do like 3.25 if you really want to. So you can get really precise. So when I was saying about the dashes over here and about how long it takes to fix them so that you get this nice neat finish in each corner, you can see why I say it takes a while to get them where you want to. Your other option when you are using dashed lines, especially in Affinity Designer, is phase, and that basically moves your dots around your shape till you get it where you're happy. So at the moment it's on 0, but if I change it to 1, you see they move. 2, they're going to move again. So we can go 3, And you can basically tweak it to the point where you want to get it, whether that's a dot on each corner. And let's just try just 3 on that now. A little bit closer maybe. 2.75. Oh, not quite that far. 2.8. 8.5. Go back to 2.8 and change my phase, I think. Very slightly. A little bit more. So these are where you're getting into your really tiny tweaks, just to get it how you want it. So you can see I've got the dot there and the dot on there just underneath these handles, and then you've got nice spaces in between. Okay, so what's the difference between canvas, affinity and skull? Canvas doesn't have anywhere near this level of control, so if you were wanting to do this in canvas, you would end up having to draw each one of those circles and then using distribute, spacing and align to make sure that you've got it all square. Affinity, this is what I'm in, so that is it. And scale, again, you do have a little bit more control than you do in canvas. Affinity is still my preferred, I have to say, out of all of them. Scale, I still feel a bit, oh, I'm not sure. But affinity, I can pretty much make it do whatever I want it to do, with the exception of warping and tracing. Okay, so that's how we can then do our little dots around the outside. And if we take those over to our shape, we can check to see how those are fitting. Okay. And if you're happy with your shape as it is, what you next want to do is go to Layer and Expand Stroke. So that's going to take it from being a path where it's got dots around it to just being the dots. So you can see suddenly the paths go around each of the circles. And it's still all in one shape, so you don't have to worry that you're going to lose a dot. Off the top of my head, Deb, I'm not entirely certain you can. Not in quite the same way, but you can use the rhinestone function instead to cheat. And that would be the way I would do it. So go to rhinestone, use outline and set the spacing accordingly, and it's going to be the spacing that's going to help you line these up. So that's another stencil that we can use, and we can drop another rectangle around the outside. Now when you draw your next shape, it's going to automatically come in with those same dots, so we can just go and take those out, put it back to a plain one, and take your line weight back down again. And we'll take that fill out of the centre for now, so we can see our shape underneath, and we can line up our rectangle to suit. Bring it down a level, select our dots and subtract. So now we have 2 stencils. And just get rid of that one because that's just random. There we go. Scale can do, in terms of the scan and cut, as much as Affinity can, but there are some things it can't do, like there's a whole section of the persona, which is how they call it in Affinity, up here, where we can go from working with vectors to working with pixels, and that means we can actually paint directly onto our shape. So if we were working as a print and cut file rather than a cut only, we can actually draw straight into this rectangle and paint in. So if you want to apply a pattern to that shape, then you can do that in vector anyway. But if you want to actually get out your graphics tablet or paint with your mouse, if you're feeling particularly pain-free, because it can work on the RSI a bit when you're painting with a mouse, then you can paint directly into a shape. So in a rectangle it's a bit more difficult to see, but what I will be doing tomorrow for the 11 o'clock app is I'm actually going to be painting in our cup in Affinity Designer. So it depends on how much you want to get into the design side of things. If all you want to do is work with print and cut in terms of somebody else's design and you want to print it and cut it out, then Scale is absolutely fine to use for that. If you want to get to the point where you want to create files for other people though, then you'll probably end up eventually wanting to go to Affinity or combining Scale with something like Photoshop or Painter or Affinity Photo. Okay, so I said I was going to do a nice big mum. So we have our mock-up here, and I always think it's useful if you're doing something like this to have at least a mock-up. I'm not worried about the resolution. I'm just mainly looking at the actual physical size. So my working document is set to millimeters, my mock-up is set to millimeters, okay? And I've also set the rectangle to millimeters, because when you first come into it, it actually comes up as pixels. Yes, you can use Procreate as well. So if you have Procreate, you can do that on your tablet. And just because I released the book at the weekend, CorelDRAW have also released a mobile app too. So my bit in the book of there isn't a mobile equivalent, there is now. It's not quite live in the UK yet, so I can't tell you how much it's going to be or give you an idea on that just yet. But as soon as I know, you'll know. So there are loads of design apps out there, and they're all slightly different in terms of where things are. But one of the things I pointed out in the book is the actual fundamental core skill of working with vectors is the same regardless of the software that you're using. So it may just be that the clicks might be in a slightly different order, but there'll still be a path and it will still have nodes, and those nodes will still have handles. Just how you interact with them may vary. So like when I was saying about the layers palette, in Illustrator you've got little blue dots and you have to click on the blue dots and not on this bit to actually select them. So let me know in the comments if you would like me to show you how to set a similar project up in Illustrator or Inkscape or CorelDRAW or even Scale, so that when it's over. Oh, Jen, have you missed the new book? So Designing with Vectors book 1 is out now. It launched at the weekend and it covers Affinity Designer, Adobe Illustrator, CorelDRAW and Inkscape, as well as having a little bit about the mobile apps for Affinity Designer and Illustrator 2. So it goes into the menus for those, but again it's pretty much the same process as the other apps. So the feel is the same, just some of the clicks are in different places. Yeah, just released, and yeah, it's my new baby. And it took a lot of work, and I'm still setting up the group, so if you have got the book already, don't panic if you can't find the group just yet. I'm just still working on it. Yep, vectors. So vectors are paths. So basically everything that we do for our cutter is a vector. So if you have something that says, oh, the image file can't be read, blah blah blah, that's because it's an actual image that's made up of dots. And what we need for our scan and cut or any cutter are paths. So that's the same whether it's the Scan and Cut, whether it's Cricut, Silhouette, a Roland industrial cutter. They all work on the same principle of vectors. Thank you. So we had a great team of proofreaders who helped me out when I was like, ah! You can only look at something for so long until you get word blindness, believe me. So when you do get the book, each section has its own guide in the group, when I eventually let you in, that has little challenges to do, places to upload your exercise results, and to also ask questions. So if you're struggling with a particular technique, then you can actually go back into it and go help. So it's designed for absolute beginners. So it literally starts you from, this is how you open a file. And you open the file, and this is how you move a shape. This is how you resize it. Okay. Then it goes on, this is how you draw your own shape. Then this is how you draw a path. This is how you colour that. So it really does hold your hand each step of the way. And the group really does help too, because for each section there's like a little mini quiz. For some others you've got the downloads in that section. Others you've got, and this is this little extra bit of information that we couldn't fit in the book. And let's see how you're going to apply that information. So the ones I've been doing today are a lot of little additional snippets that we just couldn't fit in, because the more pages I add, the more expensive it is for you guys. So it's like you've got to draw the line somewhere. So hence we have the project book that will be separate. Otherwise it would just cost a sheer fortune. And it would be more like the yearbook in terms of looking like a catalogue. Okay, so let's do our sentiment. And we're going to switch back to our vector persona. I'm going to go to my text tool. And I'm going to work straight into my mock-up document. It's a colour book throughout, with illustrations and lots of hand holding, and it's all broken down. And then when you go into the group, so for instance we've got an entire section on drawing paths that just focuses on creating lines with 2 and 3 nodes, and I've actually given you in the group the actual path document all marked up with how it's drawn. Then you can hide that layer and you have to repeat it. So it's a really good way of just practicing. Okay, I'm going to stretch that handle to that point. I'm going to then go to the next line. I'm going to click, for instance. Then I'm going to go back and I'm going to click the next one. So it goes right down to you click and drag your handle here, you click there, and you can see how I've done it actually in the file. If you want to move the nodes and play with them, you can do. What I would suggest is if you're going to start working on that layer that I've set up for you, then save a copy so you don't accidentally overwrite them. Oh yes, if you want to get into doing lots of work with cut files, or even if you just want to just get used to creating little things, then it's a really good book for that. And it's about, I think it's about 130 pages, am I right, Tracy? Without having it open, it's about 130 pages in index. So the index is really useful. So I know that some of you already have your book. It arrived yesterday. And I'm like, I'm so jealous because I won't get mine for 3 weeks. So please bear in mind, if you're saying, oh, it's this, I don't know, I can't see it. So I'm just going to stretch that mom, and then we can choose a nice font to put that in. So because I want to cut this out, I'm going to go for something that's quite bold. Even if I go for a scripty font, I want to go for something that's quite bold. So one of the things I like about the preview panel is that you can see instantly which text is going to look darker to you, and that's the one that's probably going to be better for cutting. So like this one looks quite dark, so you can see straight away it's nice and bold. But I'm looking for something that I can weld, so that one would be quite good. And I might even just do a little M just to see if that will merge a bit better with this O here. So at any point you can change, and it still hasn't got the little tail, but we can always fake it. So I'm going to make that a little bit bigger. So if you think we're going to have a stripy background in here, and then I might do something else in the background, you never know. I know, I get mine last. So I'm going to copy that now. I'm going to take that into my cut only document and I'm going to paste it in. Okay, I can bring that down the bottom. And at this point it's still just text. And let's just take it out of that layer because I want it as a separate item. So as you're working with these documents, if you're happy with things that you've done, you can lock them so they don't get messed about with. And let's go to our text. We know the size is right for what we want. And let's just pop a copy. So again, pressing and holding Alt and clicking and dragging over. And then we can work just on this one first. And we want to weld that together. So first of all, we need to convert that to curves. So let's go back to our vector view. And we're going to go convert to curves. So you can see next to there, we've got a little key press that we can use as a shortcut. So while you're learning on video, it's easier for me to go to layer and convert to curves. You can just as easily press those key presses to get there a lot quicker. No, it's because I'm only paying the print price rather than the full book price. But paying myself is a bit daft, I think. And hi Julia. So now that we've converted that to curves, you can see it's changed to a group and we've got our letters individually. Now what we want is to actually push those together. So while it's in a group, you're going to see that your calculations at the top are greyed out because it can't do that within a group, or at least Affinity can't. So we're going to ungroup it first. So that's Command Shift and G to ungroup, or Control Shift and G if you're on a PC. If you're in other software, sometimes if you find that Command Shift and G don't work, it's Command and U. Yep, you could easily do that. So set up an extra panel for the hearts and then emboss that. So now that we have those separate, we're going to merge those together. And this is what I wanted to do. So if you see that it does something like this, that means there's something not quite right with the actual font. So if we undo it. Now, if we click on our O and our M and merge those first, if you find that it still does it, go on your M, go to your node tool, and up here in the actions you have a little reverse curves. Click it. Okay. And again, we'll try again. And just see, it's done it, but we've kind of lost our little bit of detail in here. So going back to Sandra's problem with filling in the holes, what it is when you're looking at the shape, you'll be able to see that you've got these paths here, but they just haven't been actually subtracted properly. So I was doing this section in the group literally before I went live, so I'm going to go to divide, and that's going to divide all those little shapes out. And remember how I said if we subtract a group of shapes, it does it from the bottom shape and all the ones above get subtracted. So with that all selected, if we go to subtract, it's going to punch those all back through. Okay, so when you're reversing the curves, what you're essentially doing is think about it like a dot to dot. So your path goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And when you reverse it, that 6 is going to become 1, 5 becomes 2, 4 becomes 3, so on back round. And you'll be amazed the number of times that fixes an issue. So like where we just did that with the divide, that little reverse can come in handy. So now we've got our and now we need to join our So we have mum. So rather than trying to do it as two separate entities, I want to have it so that it actually loops together. So you have a few options. You could just go straight across here. You can loop it back up to the top. So I'm going to take my pen tool. I'm going to click towards the centre. So again, it's doing that snapping thing. So if we press and hold Alt, we can click in the middle. And same here. So press and hold Alt. Don't release your mouse just yet. We're going to click and drag that up so it becomes a curve. And at this point you're thinking, oh, that's tiny. We're going to use our line weight and we're going to punch that up so it starts to match the border and our letter. So about there, I think. So obviously the thicker we go, the stronger that joint's going to be. We're going to go to Layer, Expand Stroke, and again that's got its own key press. So in the book there's a shortcuts page, you'll be glad to know that you can stick a little tab on. So there's our little stroke. We have our and our stroke, and we want to weld all of those together. Okay. Is there, honest. Let's undo. Come on. Be nice, thank you. Let's do it one at a time then. So whenever you have problems welding, if you do it one at a time, you can see where it's going a bit wrong. Let's move these up. So we'll happily do it to the on. No. It's good, isn't it, when even my own curves aren't happy. Try and reverse that one then. So sometimes you just need to reverse one, other times you need to reverse two. So you need to activate your node tool to get to that button. And then back to your move tool to be able to select stuff. It does not like this today, does it? Let's just try something really daft. No, it just doesn't like that. Okay. If it does that and it doesn't want to play ball, here's another way of doing it. I'm going to draw a rectangle over the top. This is good, isn't it? All the ways to fix files. Let's drop that down to the bottom of our little section. And I'm going to subtract from that. So at the moment you're going to think, oh, that looks awful. Don't worry. Let's first of all thin down that outer line so you can see our letters nice and easily. And if we go to nodes, you can see that we've got all these nodes in one shape. So I'm going to select the outside nodes so that they turn blue. Can delete those and it's going to reverse it round and it's already welded. So now, where if I go to my stroke, so back to my pen tool, just going to click off that for a moment. Put the pen back in and let's try again, shall we? You never know, it might behave. Let's put my stroke right back up. Bum-ba-dum-ba-dum. I can always tweak the position of my nose. So remember, nothing is final until you go to that expand stroke. Then it gets a little bit more tricky to edit, but it's not impossible. I just want to do it just so that it looks like it flows into this letter. Okay, your nodes are your little dots. So they're the dots in your dot to dot. So they'd be the ones that are labelled with like a 1, 2, 3. Okay, and your path is the line that goes between them. So that's the bit you draw in your dot to dot. And the handles just tell you where that line's got to curve. So if the handles aren't there, you'd literally draw straight from the straight line from 1 to 2 and 2 to 3 and so forth. So it's quite useful to look at it kind of that way in terms of the analogy of a dot to dot. Okay, so I'm going to go and expand that stroke and hope it works this time. So select 2. It's just not liking me today, is it? Okay, if it doesn't want to do it like that. I wonder if it's something daft, like the strokes on top. Let's try that out. There you go. How daft is that? And that is why vectors are, well, yeah, fun. Because sometimes it's just something silly, like a little conflict. So sometimes if you have like two nodes that are close together, that'll cause a conflict, especially in Canvas. Canvas is terrible for having an issue if two nodes are even like remotely close to one another. And you just see it's intersecting, even though, well, obviously you want them to intersect to be able to weld, but if the two dots overlap. Oh, that's fine. Ask all the questions you want. You learn more by asking questions and waiting for me to necessarily point out exactly what's going on. Okay, so we've got our mom over here, and I'm thinking it would be really nice to do like a solid version that we can put underneath with a different colour. So what we can do is we can select our mom. Again, we're going to convert it to curves. I'm going to ungroup it, because remember we have to ungroup to access our calculations. And then we're going to weld it, and if see that, just to prove it's still going to play up in the same place. So let's go back and we'll reverse that one and select those. It has just done an update as well, so it's probably still a little bit. I'm going to divide it so that we've got all those elements. Now before you go and weld it all, just stop, because you've got these two sections here that you're still going to want to punch out. So you can see nice and handily they're on top. So if we press and hold Command, we can actually deselect them. So that's Control on a PC. And we're going to weld those remaining shapes together, and we've got a nice solid background. But we've still got these two shapes here. So we'll select those two and our mom. Go to subtract, and we've got our background shape that is exactly the same as our letters, so we don't need to worry about putting a colour underneath this join here, and then we can just layer them up. And there you go. There's a little bit of a project for you to start to create. And then this afternoon I'm going to be cutting these out and applying the ink onto the panels, so that you can see how we do that. So join us at 7 for the video. It is going to be partly pre-recorded just because of time, so that I can speed things up if need be, especially tomorrow's, because it's going to be digital colouring. But I will be watching live with you, so that if you do have any questions, I can pop answers in the comments. Yep, you can create, if you wanted to do that as an offset, you can do with the contour tool as well. I'm having difficulty seeing some of the questions as the lettering is white and extending over the white screen. Is it possible to change it to black or just darker? Ooh, I don't know. I'm watching on my phone, so it's on a black background for me. And it kind of stops underneath the video before it gets that far. Maybe just check to see if your Facebook app is updating. And you're welcome, Deb. And you're welcome, Jen. So, if you do have any questions between now and 7 o'clock, in terms of needing help to create the file, do let me know. I will be doing some pre-recording though, so I may not get back to you straight away, but I will try my best. So if you do have any urgent questions, if you ask them sort of over the next hour or so, then I should be able to answer fairly easily, as I'm hopefully going to have lunch. I'm somewhat hungry. That's good that you all enjoyed it. I've been wanting to do this for a week or so, but the book was kind of getting in the way. So I'm probably going to do some more like this where we actually break it down, so that we do the designing side, and then we're going to do a bit making, then maybe something a bit different. So like we've got the digital colouring coming tomorrow. So Carol, I know you'll be looking forward to that because you want to get into doing that with Affinity Designer. So we can have a play with doing some gradients and things and tracing, and then can really see the pen tool go for it then. Sorry you missed quite a bit, Carol. Ah, there you go. So you got the 22. Yeah. Yeah, I'm happy with my 12 at the moment. So, I don't think I'll be changing anytime soon, unless, you know, it decides it's going to blow itself up or something. So, take care, and I will see you later. So, as I said, it will be pre-recorded later, but we will be watching live. No, Affinity is a one-off, and it's currently half price if you're quick. So they put it back down because we went back into lockdown here in the UK, and Affinity's actually based in Nottingham, so it's created by Serif. And they don't sadly do an affiliate program, otherwise I would join it in a heartbeat. Because it's one of the things that I think is really, really easy. Really easy. And you can also get it on the iPad as well. It's a separate purchase to have it on the iPad, but it's worth it. So if you have it on both, then you can work between the two. Using either iCloud or Dropbox. Both work well. And sorry to hear you couldn't sort the mat issue out. I will try and pop a link up in the group for you, Jen. Yeah, it is my favourite. It's because I'm lazy, if I'm being blunt. Because rather than having to go between a photo program and a vector program, I can go in Affinity and do pretty much most of the things that you can do in both in one place. So the only thing it can't really do, in, as I said, is warping and tracing just yet. And things like liquefying stuff, I tend to go to either Photoshop or Affinity Photo for. And it's the same when I'm working in Publisher. So the book is created in Publisher, and where we've got these three little icons up here, you've got a similar set in Publisher, where you've got one that is Publisher, just here, and then it has another button that takes you straight into Designer, and another one that takes you straight into Photo without actually leaving the app. So it will look like you've changed, but you actually haven't. So rather than having to have three programs open at once, you can actually just have the one and go between them. So Affinity Publisher is basically the page layout software, so it's the equivalent of Adobe InDesign or Quark Express if you're kind of my age and remember that far. So that's basically where it is. It's for doing magazines and books. Okay, so take care and hopefully see you all back here later. And bye for now.